binding because I think it's a really fun binding. But it's a fairly simple one. So if you're new to making books, this is really accessible. If you're fairly experienced at making books, this is a nice one just to kind of cleanse your palette and also to just kind of knock out quite quickly. If you're not in the mood to spend hours sitting at your desk, you can just kind of knock this one out pretty fast. Let me just see who is here. Hi everyone. Oh, Deborah's here from Rome. Oh, we're all coming over for a glass of wine, Deborah. Hi Celeste. Hi Nancy. Hope you're feeling better. Hey Stacey. If you are new here and you're just joining us, welcome. We're really happy to have you here. Any questions, pop them in the comments. We're a friendly bunch. I'm sure some folks in the comments will answer any questions you have, as well as myself or Mickey, who's part of the Vintage Page Designs team. So let's jump straight into the project. This is the little book we're going to make today. The important part is the binding. Your book cover will look completely different to mine because we all kind of have our own taste and style. This is the binding that we will make. I like to call it the bead stitch because you can put a little bead in there. It's like a long stitch with a little stitch over the top, and that reminds me of a bead. So I call it a bead stitch. It is inspired by Keith Smith binding, and I believe he calls it a bow tie. It just doesn't strike me as a bow tie stitch. So anyhows, but it is inspired by Keith Smith, so I want to give him credit. Let's talk about what supplies you will need. You will need a book cover. You'll need one signature, so it's a single signature, and by signature we just mean sheets of paper folded over. So get a whole bunch of sheets of paper and then fold them down the middle, crease them with a bone folder. That's a signature. If you need a refresher on how to make signatures, we'll pop a link in the comments and in the description because we have a video about that. So you'll need a signature. I'm using, because it's a single signature, I used, for this one, I used some Khadi paper, which is fairly thick. It's a handmade paper. For the book I'm using today, I've used text weight Mohawk superfine paper, a fairly thick signature. I think there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 pages folded over, so 24 in total. So it's a fairly thick signature. The size I'm working with is 6 inches high for the signature, and then our cover is 6 1/4 inches high. So the width doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that the cover wraps all the way around the signature. Otherwise, we're kind of in trouble. You can see that this is bigger, and I'm going to trim it up afterwards. So signature height is 6 inches. The cover height is 6 1/4. What can we use for a cover? I'm using Kraft-tex, but you don't have to use Kraft-tex. You could use cardstock, like a heavy pattern scrapbook paper. Could use a watercolor paper. We're going to score this, so you can see here this spine is scored, so it's something that you can score and is relatively stiff to hold up as a cover. So that's what you need for a cover. And then you'll just need some thread, so 18 inches of thread, so 3 times the height of the book. I can put it this way, 6 inches times 3, which is 18. And we have the printable directions. Where did I put my printable directions? Oh, they're down here. We have printable directions available for this too. So they are in the description of this video, and Mickey will also pop a link into the comments too. But if you're watching the recording or you're on your laptop, you can download the printed directions for this. Here's my cover. It is a piece of Kraft-tex. It's a pre-washed Kraft-tex. So it's kind of got this nice texture. If it was unwashed, it'd be very smooth. The unwashed does not have a grain, so I'm not worried about it. But if this was unwashed, or if this was a piece of watercolor paper that was machine made, we'd want to make sure that our grain was running this way, because this is the way our spine is going to go. Here is the signature, which has a little bit of dirt on it. Don't know why that's on there. Here's our signature. Let's flip it over, which is made from a text weight paper. There's 12 sheets folded over, so 24, and my thread. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to follow along with my directions. So if you are able to print the directions, it might be useful. You can just follow along. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the head of my book. No, Roberta, you didn't miss anything. So I'm marking the top or the head with a little cross. Let's put some light on because the sun's gone in. I'm also going to mark the top of my cover. You can't see that, but you'll just have to trust me that there's a little X there. And the reason we're marking that is when we make the punching template, we want to make sure that the holes all line up correctly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, the reason I have this piece of cereal box is because I know many of you do not have something called brass spacers. So this is what's called a brass spacer, a metal spacer, and we have them in different widths in bookbinding to make sort of even measurements. So I know that many of you don't have these kind of things. So we're going to make ourselves a little 1/2 inch spacer from this. Actually, it's a pizza box. It was from my dinner last night. So just to prove to you, it's not all gourmet cuisine in this house. And I'm going to cut myself a little 1/2 inch spacer. So I'm just going to, you can mark with a pencil. I'm just going to mark with the tip of my knife. You do want to make sure it's pretty accurate because we're going to use this a couple times during the process of making this book. Let's turn that around. And I know you all want to know about my triangle. It's from Colophon. It's the 9 inch. Hopefully that's lined up. It's the 9 inch. 60-90, I think. 30-60-90 triangle. It's got inches and centimeters on it, and I love it. Okay, we can put this aside for another project. We will not need that anymore. So here we have this little 1/2 inch spacer. You want it to be at least 6 inches high or taller than your cover. So say you were doing a larger book, just make sure this spacer is a tiny bit larger than your cover. So this is our little spacer. What we're going to do next is we're going to create this spine. So let's see in the example. See this spine right down here? It's scored and it's a 1/2 inch wide, hence our 1/2 inch spacer. So our first step is to score this right in the middle of our cover. Remember, your cover can be Kraft-tex, it can be watercolor paper, it can be anything you like. And I could measure to find the middle of this, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to fold it over and pinch right there. So now I know that that is the center right there. And I'm able to do this because I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room. When I made this cover, do you see I've got some wiggle room here? So I always like to do that. So that little pencil mark, which you probably can't see, was the center, which I just found by just pressing right in the middle. If you want to, just use a ruler. There it is, right there. It's kind of tough to see, but hey ho. I'm going to mark it on the bottom, right there. I'm going to take this 1/2 inch spacer and I'm just going to mark the middle of it, of the top and bottom as well. I'm not sure if I put that on the directions, but it's just kind of helpful. And what I'm going to do is, you know what would be useful? Would be if this was the same size rather than a little bit bigger, wouldn't it? So let's just make that at the same size. There we go. Just mark the middle. So now we have our little cereal box spacer. We're popping it in the middle of our book. I might just hold it in place with some washi tape. What's that? This part here, let me just come a little bit closer. It would be really worth spending some time doing this to make sure that it's straight. So what you don't want is the well, I know you wouldn't do it like that, but if it was even just slightly off, then your spine and your book is going to be ski whiff, as my mother would say. So it's worth just making sure this is right in the center. I'm going to hold it in place with some washi tape. And then I'm just going to grab my triangle and just check that it's nice and square. You could also use a quilting ruler for this. So that looks good. So this here is my spine. I'm going to take the tip of a bone folder, like here, this tip here. I could use the tip of my scissors. Oh, hear the sirens. Could use the tip of my scissors too to score it. I'm going to use the back of my knife to score it. Use whatever you would like to score either your paper or your Kraft-tex. Line this up here, and then I'm scoring on either side. There we go. So I'm scoring on the inside, and then I'll score on the outside as well. Get rid of this now. That pretty washi tape. There we go. Pop that in the trash. Hold on to this though. You will need that one more time. So, actually, I don't really need to score it again. I can just bone fold it really, really well. I did a good enough job. If you want to rescore it on the front, you certainly can. So then fold it over. One important thing, make sure these edges line up right here. What you don't want is it over to one side. Let me see if there's any questions. Nope. Excellent. There we go. So now we have this little book cover, just like this. Give it one more bone fold, because why not, eh? Okay, here we have our book cover. So right now, I'm going to show you a particular stitch that I like, but at this point, you could do any kind of decorative stitch here that you would like. So next thing, you want that scrap of paper that I mentioned earlier. It's going to be the same height as the cover, and then we just want to make it a couple inches wide. Doesn't really matter. Don't need to be particularly precise, just a couple inches wide. So this, remember, is from the scrap paper. And remember, we're keeping this close by, our little cereal box template, we're keeping that close by. Let's mark the head of that, like we marked the head of our signature and we marked the head of our cover. Of course, I have to find the head of the cover, which, oh, there it is. It's right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark our punching holes. So these holes here that we have for sewing, we're going to mark them on this template, and then we're going to transfer them to our cover and then transfer them to our signature. So the way we're going to do that, we are not going to use a ruler. No rulers required. What you're going to do, and this is all in your written directions too, so never fear, we're going to take it, fold it in half lengthways. You can just use your finger, you don't need to use your bone folder. So that we have a center channel like that. So you sip my coffee. Lisa's late to the party, that's okay. Hi, Katie. If anyone is joining us for the first time, please say hi in the comments and let us know where you're from and that you are new. So center channel, and then I'm going to fold in half the other direction. I'm going to fold in half again. So essentially we're dividing it into thirds. So when you open it up, hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can. We have these lines, these folded lines, and at their intersection we have 3 points. Let me mark them in pen so that you can see them well. We have our 3 center stitches, and the way our stitch is going to work, it's going to be let me show you on the back here. We're going to have 3 stitches. We're going to have this one in the middle, which we have just made, and then we're going to put a stitch on either side. So here's our center stitch. We're going to put 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here, one there, flip it around. So they're in sets of 3. So if you were making a bigger book, you may want to do 4 sets of 3 or 5 sets of 3, but they're always going to be in sets of 3. Okay, so grab this little spacer, a 1/2 inch spacer, and that's what we're going to use this for. Just going to mark 1/2 inch from that first one and 1/2 inch in the other direction. So we have 1, 2, 3, our first set of 3. Let's do the same again. This side, I mean, by all means use a ruler, but you know, I know some people are kind of ruler phobic, and this just seems easier to me. Let's set one there, another one there. So for this 6-inch high book, you're going to have 9 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they're going to be in like sets of 3. There's the first set of 3, second set of 3, third set of 3. Remember, bigger book, you can do more sets of 3. Okay, let's transfer these measurements onto our book cover. I'm going to put them on the front of the cover so that the material pushes through. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to center this on here. I may, am I going to eyeball it? Most likely I'm going to eyeball centering this. If that just makes you come out in hives, by all means don't. By all means measure it. Let's keep it in place with washi tape. You don't have to use washi tape, by the way, just use Scotch tape. I just have to have this roll on my desk. Underneath here is a piece of foam, kids foam. Just going to use that. So I have this on my center, this spine channel that I created, and I've roughly centered it. And if it's not perfectly centered, I think the world's going to be okay. And I'm just going to push through with these sewing holes. And I'm going from the front to the back, outside to inside. And the reason I'm doing that is that sometimes, you know, you get a little burr like that, a little bit extra. I don't know if you can see it. You get like, there you go, you can see it there, a little bit of extra. So I prefer to have that on the inside. I'm just looking if there's any questions. No, I think we're good. Take this off. Oh, that's not bad, actually. And I did get my heads lined up. So here's the head of my cover. Here's the head of my template. Just going to fold these over because I don't want to rip it. And then I'm going to use this same template and punch the holes in my signature. So you could also do it on the foam if you want to, or you could use a punching cradle. Now, someone asked actually for a tutorial on how to use the punching cradle, which I thought was good. These are the punching cradles I sell, but you can also make your own, and you can also buy them too. Right now, we don't have any in stock. So mine is glued because I don't travel with it. So you just put the signature opened out in the center here. You make sure that it's even top and bottom. My head is here on the left. So when I put this little template in, we're going to make sure it's on the left. Now you'll notice that this is bigger than my signature because we measured it on the cover, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to center it, and there will be 1/8 of an inch top and bottom. Hope you can see that okay. Let's come out a little bit. And then we're just going to go straight down through the center of the signature and then out the hole at the bottom. So you go all the way down. And, you know, don't be with these exposed bindings, don't be afraid to make a decent size hole. And I've got 12 sheets of paper, so honestly, I'm having to press pretty darn hard to get these holes through. And I'm going all the way through to the desk. So there we go. So this, we're done with this now. I can set that aside. And honestly, this is so thick that I'm going to go through one more time And just really make sure that these holes are a decent size, because I think I'll struggle otherwise. And you could clip these together if you wanted to, like with a quilting clip or just a binder's clip. Let me grab one. Just hold these together. A piece of paper just to protect your book. If you felt more comfortable, you could just clip it together like that so that the holes stayed aligned. All right, and now we're ready to sew, my friends. So remember, you have the directions. So if for some reason, you know, I'm twisting the book and you can't see it properly, I have got the written directions for you. And I think it says sewing directions, and it should be, fingers crossed, they're correct, because you never know. Hopefully, I didn't make any mistakes, but if I did, let me know and I can just update it. So, piece of thread. I'm going to use white so that we can see it on the outside. And you need 3 times the height of the book. So for us, that's going to be 18 inches because this is, well, a little bit more than 18 inches because this is 6 1/4 high. But say you're doing a different size book, so I want to do 3 times the height. This is a wax linen thread. I think it's about a 3 ply, which is maybe like an 18 and 12, if that's how you refer to your thread. If you were using a pearl cotton, it would be maybe a 5, maybe, if I forget the numbers. So piece of thread, grab yourself a needle. Let's see if I've got one of my favorite needles. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, here it is. Woohoo! It's my favorite needle. It's from, it's a bookbinder number 1. It's got a blunt end. Love that needle. Got to order some more because I don't know about you, but my needles just disappear. Any questions? Oh yes, this foam core. This is that kids foam, you know, that sticky foam that you get from the craft store that kids make shapes out of. It's 4 pieces of that, and it's sticky backed. I'm not going to peel it's sticky backed, so I just stuck 4 pieces together. But you could use foam core as well, or phone book, or anything kind of soft. I just want to protect my self-healing cutting mat. Could also use cardboard, you know, a piece of cardboard. Great questions, everybody. Great questions. Yes, styrofoam. Peggy, the written instructions, they are in the description, but also Mickey will pop them in the comments for you, so you can print out the written directions. All right, important. The head of my signature is here, because we want these holes to line up. We've gone to all this trouble. We want to make sure that our holes line up. There's the head of my book with that tiny mark. So I'm going to sew this way around so that they line up. Let's just double check. It's always good to check, right? Yep, they're going to line up nicely. I wish that didn't have dirty marks. But they line up great. Always worth checking before you start sewing that your sets of holes are aligned. Okay. Thread my needle. We're going to start on the inside, hole number 1. Come from the inside to the outside. Let me come in a bit closer for you folks. Hopefully we are focused. I want to leave a little tail inside. I want you to skip hole number 2 and come down to hole number 3. Come back inside the book. Sometimes you've got to go through the cover and then the signature. Pull nice and tight. So we skipped hole number 2. So out here on the cover, here's hole 1. Hole number 2 is underneath. Here's hole number 3. We're inside the book now. We're going to exit hole number 2, and this is where we make the bead. So at this point, come on, there we go. This point, you genuinely can add a bead. I'm not a big bead person. I don't have lots of beads, but at this point you could add a bead on. You may need to unthread your needle and just slide it through the thread, but you could add a bead. We're going over the top of that long stitch we just created, and we're going back into the same hole, number 2, just like that. Let's come back inside. There we are. Straighten everything up. Let's give everything a nice tighten. So what we have inside now, we just exited hole number 2 right here. We've got our loose thread at hole number 1 where we started. Let's tie this off to make it nice and secure. So we're just going to tie a square knot right here. There we go. Let's just trim off the short piece. Don't trim off the long piece. So let's flip it over and see where we're at. So here is our first little bead stitch. We have the one long stitch there, and then we have this little bead coming over the top. So this could actually be genuinely a bead or just a piece of thread. So essentially, we're just going to repeat that in holes 4, 5, and 6, then 7, 8, and 9. Let me see if there's any questions. Maybe I could show the ticket stitch. Okay, I will think about that. So I'm right here around number 2. I need to come down to number 4. Okay. Hole 4. So do you see what I mean? If you are a new bookmaker, this is just a little different than pamphlet stitch, but it helps you practice lots of skills. Okay, so we're coming into the last hole, so it's number 6. Skipping this middle one. We'll come back to it. You know, it's good practice for making signatures, making covers, scoring, measuring, making sure things are straight, making templates. Let's go back to the middle. You can see that. Just going to pull my hands away so you can see. I'm bringing the thread over the top of that long stitch and going back in the same hole to create a little bead. So who here has an amazing bead collection? I just don't. I don't know why. I have buttons coming out my ears. I'm just not a bead person, but so now we're here. We're going to do the final one. So this is hole number 7. Come out hole number 7. So a little change from pamphlet stitch, just a little more, you know, just a little more interesting, I guess. Into hole number 9. Sometimes, you know, it goes all in one go, but rarely. I find I have to do it twice. Hole number 9, I'm going to come out hole number 8. So I'm kind of going back on myself like that. Let's come in a tiny bit closer just in case it's not completely clear. There we go. You know, give it a tug, make sure it's nice and tight. If you have a watercolor cover, just be careful when you're tightening your stitches that you don't rip your paper. So this Kraft-tex is a paper fabric and it's really robust. I can pretty much do anything to it. But if you do have paper, when you're tugging and sort of finishing up the stitches, be careful. Another tip, if you want to say this is made from, say, handmade paper or watercolor paper, you could always reinforce on the inside. You could put maybe a strip on the inside of paper or even a Tyvek or even fabric just to give some strength to that spine. Okay, so I'm just finishing up by coming back over that long stitch into this tiny hole right here, the middle hole, back to the middle of the book. I'm going to tie off. See who has beads. Pat Friedrich, yes, you have to jump in, my friend. We're going to get you hooked. Okay, so to finish off, we're going to do what's called a half hitch knot. Wow, the light here is so odd, isn't it? With the sun going in and out. So it's a bit more light. It's called a half hitch knot. So I'm going to slide my needle underneath that long stitch to make a loop. Then come in the opposite direction through that loop and pull downwards like that. Under there to form a loop and bring the needle back through. I'm going to trim that up, then I'm going to go in with my bone folder and tidy up these knots because I don't love all these. So I'm just going to take my bone folder and sort of press down the stitches just so the knots disappear a little bit. And then get rid of that clip. And then I'm going to, another thing I'm going to do is, see how these sort of holes have blown out? That's what I call it. I'm just going to push those down. It's a tiny detail. You don't really have to do that. But I'm fussy. Push those down. Give it a nice bone fold. There is your little book. You can see that. Turn down the light now. The sun's come back out. There's your little book. And then I would go in with my ruler and trim up the extra. So I would put my ruler in like this, leave a little bit of metal showing. You see right here, I'm going with a sharp knife and trim it up. You could also make your cover like a wraparound cover. So make the back nice and big and have it sort of wrap around. It's your book, you get to choose. So trim up the edges. Let's look at this one that I made right here. It's one we made earlier. So for this one, before, this is Kraft-tex. Before I sewed it, I splattered on some watercolor, some blue watercolor paint, and I actually believe this is some Daniel Smith watercolors. I just kind of splattered it. I allowed it to dry. I mean, you could do it afterwards, right? That wouldn't be a problem. And then I did some collage work on the cover here. So I put, this is an image transfer. This was from Kristen Peterson's Bookmaker Collective class, Dipped and Sewn, I believe it was called. So this was an image transfer on fabric, because this month's challenge is fabric. And then this is a security envelope that I had on my desk, thanks to Kathy Johnson. It's just a piece of decorative paper. I did some line work with a plain black pen. The nice thing about Kraft-tex is it takes loads of different mediums, like tons. You could use Posca paint pens, watercolors, acrylics, acrylic paint, acrylic ink, sprays. It takes anything. And then I just use the sewing machine to stitch on that piece of collage on the cover. And I mean, if you're interested in the middle and the pages on the inside, I haven't really done very much on them. There's a tiny bit of collage here, but I just took a large sheet of Khadi paper and before I tore it down, I splattered the same paints, the blue and the brown paint that I put on the cover. And then I just went in with, I think this was like some kind of pencil, like a Stabilo pencil, and made big marks so that when you cut it down, they're just kind of abstract marks. So who knows what I'll do with the insides? Oh, now I'll let you know. So that's what my insides looks like on this book. On the sample one, it's writing paper for a journal. So, all right, my friend. So that is the little bead stitch book. I am excited to see what you make. What is Khadi paper? Khadi paper is an Indian handmade paper. It's really nice. Honestly, that's one of my favorite papers is Khadi paper. It's you can get a smooth and a rough texture, and you can get all sorts of weights. So the weight that I use is a 210 GSM, and I use the smooth. But you can get it in black. I believe you can get it, I want to say you can get it in grey. I think you can get it in grey. I could be wrong. Definitely get it in black because I have it in black. And then, this kind of off-white color. It's really, really nice. I use it for most of my sort of art journals. Could you do more than one signature? Yeah, if you did more than one signature, you would have just double rows of this stitching, which would be kind of nice. So I would make your spine wider. So maybe make your spine 3/4 of an inch. Where's that little, that little spine piece? If you want to do more than one signature, just says through in the book, make your spine wider. So maybe 3/4, maybe an inch, and then you can put multiple rows of this. So it's the same principle, just increase the rows of holes. Good question from Meg. She says, let's pop it on the screen. If you want to reinforce the spine with fabric, is it best to mount that right against the cover? So I would. So if you've got a piece of book cloth that's already got some paper on the back, I would maybe reinforce the spine with some book cloth on the inside, just glue it straight down. If you want to put the fabric straight on there, like it's not backed with paper, you can do that, as just long as it's a tightly woven paper such that the glue won't come through. So I would just put it on with some white glue or even some wheat paste. Ideally, it would be backed with paper and it would be a book cloth, but life isn't always ideal, and it's 10 o'clock at night and you're like, damn, I got to make that book. So as long as you've got a tightly woven fabric, you could probably just glue it without any paper on the back. I hope that answers your question, but yes, go straight onto the, I'd go straight onto the cover rather than the signature. One other thing is, remember this month's challenge is fabric. So when you've made a fabric, a book or book type structure using fabric, about fabric, remember to upload it to the website. I'm sure Mickey will put a link in for me, and you'll be entered into the drawing and you might be in the gallery. And then finally, as we're on announcements, just put this in your calendar, folks. July 5th, 2021, we have our next 5-day challenge. So yes, mark your calendar. It's 5 days, July 5th through 10th, I'm guessing that is 11th, I don't know. So yes, another 5-day challenge, which should be a lot of fun. So